Upfront and Outspoken with Bob Williams. If you love the Constitution,
man is not free unless government is limited.
If you love freedom,
as government expands, liberty contracts.
If you believe in personal responsibility, if you believe America is still the greatest nation on earth, then get ready for an experience you'll never forget. This is Upfront and Outspoken. Here's your host, Bob Williams.
Some folks are born made to wave the flag. Ooh, they're red, white, and blue.
And welcome back. This is Upfront Outspoken. Of course, I'm your host, Bob Williams. I know I had a guest that was supposed to come on today in place of who I have. But the reason I had to cancel that one and get my guest on, I'm talking about, he is the host of Passionate Justice. You hear him here on the Starcom Radio Network every Saturday at 2 p.m. He also is my normal Friday guest. But I wanted to bring Jonathan Wolfman back and, get his take, get his insight onto what is going on right now in Israel with the attack on this synagogue. Good morning, Jonathan, and I thank you for taking time out of your day and coming on.
Well, thank you, Bob, and good morning again to everybody. It's a sad day.
Yeah, that it is indeed. I know you. When we were off air, you were talking. You only had like about 20 minutes to kind of prep to get on here. What's your take about exactly what is going on over there, and what is the I guess you could say the underlying current that caused today's episode?
Understand this right, and I think I do, is that elements that are not within the control of Mr. Abbas, who is the head of the PLO, that is the Muslim entity that runs the West Bank, elements that he has found very difficult to control, took it upon themselves, egged on by some radical leaders, to show that they are in fact as tough and as big boy as the Hamas terrorists. Because of course Hamas has been getting, let's look at it from let's step back a moment and realize that the activists on the West Bank have been taking a real backseat to the terrorists, if you want to call them activists. I would not. I would call them terrorists in Gaza, that is Hamas. And so, egged on by some radicals in the West Bank, this group of, a small group apparently, of 4 or 5 guys showed up this morning, very early this morning, for morning prayers at a very well-known, established, ultra-Orthodox, that is very, very traditional synagogue, and the men tend to show up at 6:45, 7 o'clock to begin their morning prayers, and they were attacked with guns and knives, and 4 rabbis were murdered. The police came to the scene, as I understand it, had a gun battle with the assailants, and killed all of them. One of the Israeli police apparently was critically wounded, and we don't yet know, at least I don't yet know, what his condition is in.
Well, the word we have is that we do have one Israeli police officer who was killed.
Oh, damn, then he didn't make it. Okay. Then he didn't make it. Yeah, the last I had heard, as I say, is that he had been critically wounded. The guys who pulled this off, their people say that the reason they did it was because they didn't like the fact that this synagogue was near certain Islamic holy sites in Jerusalem, and because of the ongoing, what they consider ongoing poor treatment of Muslims and Palestinians.
Let me start.
I would make, I guess I would make this point.
Okay.
This synagogue, if you see, I'm looking at a photo of this synagogue now. online as I'm speaking with all of you, and I would tell you all that this is not some makeshift tent that some radical Jews set up to say, hi, we're going to stick it in your face, Muslims, and we're going to start praying here. This is a old established synagogue. I'm looking at the stone walls. I'm looking at the beautiful lattice work. I'm looking at the windows. This has stairs. It has ramps. This synagogue's been here for decades upon decades in Jerusalem.
No, I hate to interrupt you, Jonathan,
Yeah,
but you had brought up the fact that this particular synagogue was close by where Muslims have their services. I guess I don't know what you want to call them, but their gatherings. Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Jerusalem, but if how close are these actually? I mean, everything in Jerusalem, from what we see on movies or whatever, everything's pretty compact. Are these really that close?
It is all compact, and it's one of the things that we here in America, because we're so physically distant from each other in America. Here you are in Oklahoma, here I am outside Washington, D.C. When you're in Western Europe, driving from Germany to France, you can do it in a day, just like I could drive in a day from here outside Washington to New York. In the Middle East, it's the same. You can get across Israel by car in an hour and a half. The synagogue and the Muslim holy sites are within, I don't mean this as a bad pun, but they're within a stone throws of one another.
Okay.
And the whole point is, we're all human beings. We all ought to be able to, if we are of a religious bent, if you are, or I am, or whatever, if we're of a religious bent, you ought to be able to go to church or synagogue or mosque and just wave to each other in the morning, but not waving guns.
Yeah, I agree. Now, we've gotten word that the Israeli government has already given notice to the families of these assailants, notification that, guess what, Israel is about to go in there and demolition the residence of these assailants. Is that, in your opinion, Jonathan, isn't that adding fuel to the fire?
It may, and I gotta say, I do not know what the basis for that kind of decision is. I wonder, though, do they have a track record? Do these families have a track record of harboring other terrorists or weapons and weapons caches? If that's the case, then you can more easily understand that kind of decision. If it's merely punitive, then I would agree that one would have to get another kind of response from the Israeli government. Why is that worth it, knowing it's going to raise everybody's hackles?
The thing is, I know Netanyahu needs to bolster the response from Israel in reference to this, but we have heard here many times that there was some unknown source, I don't know who it was, that basically called and I'm going to put it and exactly the way it was put. They were saying that Benjamin Netanyahu was a chicken shit, and is it possible that because of that comment made from someone within the State Department, he feels, look, I have to show these people I'm not this way, that I will go after whoever intends to harm Israel? Or is it just merely the fact that something had to be done and this seemed at the moment to be appropriate?
I suspect it's not the first, and I think a guy like Netanyahu has been used to for quite some time with criticism of all kinds, whether it's chicken shit or something else, from the United States State Department. I think what goes on is the same thing, the same kinds of pressures on him from the Israeli public. When this kind of thing happens, because everybody, as you said a few moments ago so wisely, Bob, that people live so close to one another, distances are not far. Missiles lobbed from Gaza into Israel. It's a 15-minute situation. You hear the sirens. You got to get the hell out of wherever you are. You got to get underground. I mean, immediately, I think what's going on here is that Netanyahu already knows that the political pressure from his own people are that you got to stop these guys. You got to figure out a way to just stop this. We can't have our older Jews going to synagogue, old men and women. I said to you off the air, and I'll tell the audience, I believe that one of the families who was represented by one of the murdered rabbis this morning, I used to teach with one of those guys. The family's name is Torsky. And the Torsky rabbi family is old, and it's a European family, that many of them are in Israel now, and some in America. And it's a very respected, scholarly family of old line, old-style Orthodox Jews. And these are decent, nice guys who happen to be very religious. And it just saddens me to think that one guy wakes up in the morning, he does what he does every morning, goes to prayer, and he's killed.
We've already heard leaders of Hamas and leaders of the PLO condemn the actions of these individuals, but yet it seems that these individuals have links to both the PLO and Hamas. Now,
that's correct.
Now, given what is, given that side of the story, will Hamas and will the PLO be able to convince the Israeli government, hey, we didn't have nothing to do with this?
I don't think so, because I would like to think yes. I would like to think there might be some back channel, but I also know that some of the people who work in very high levels with the PLO have already, while condemning it out of one side of their mouth, have already made statements. You can already find statements on the internet this morning from Hanan Ashwari, who is a spokeswoman for the PLO, saying, well, it's bad, but it's understandable. Well, no, it's not. It's not understandable.
That's interesting. That's something we didn't pick up here yet, but I'm sure we will later today. The thing that really troubles me is, you brought it up, in that there is back channel negotiations right now between Israel, Hamas, and Palestine. We know that there's this back channel negotiations going on. An incident like this, doesn't that harden Israel's position?
Of course it does. And I think that what happens is you tend to see these things, and I'll make an analogy for our audience. Back when everything was hot in Northern Ireland, I want people to remember back, if you're old enough, when things got really close to settlement in Northern Ireland before the more or less final settlement, you would have hotheads on both sides doing something like this in Belfast or in Londonderry in order to scuttle any progress that was going on.
So what are they hoping to achieve by this, Jonathan?
Well, because these are the kinds of people who don't want Jews around. That's what it's about for them. And I think sometimes we in the West think, well, everybody there just wants the best settlement they can get. And I don't think that's the case. I think that the people who do this kind of thing just don't want Israel there. Remember, we said this all summer, Bob, that the Hamas basic constitution says that the reason Hamas exists is to get rid of Jews and Israel, and it says to get rid of Jews wherever we find them, which could mean in Timbuktu.
Exactly. I mean, we've stressed that at that point many times, and in fact, yesterday we aired a clip where somebody from I forget what her name is, from the BBC had interviewed a member of Hamas who was in Lebanon, and she brought up the fact that in the Hamas charter, constitution, whatever the hell you want to call this damn thing, it calls for the eradication of Jews everywhere. And yeah, you're right. We have stresses, but you know the thing is what's disturbing is last week you brought up a very interesting thing that occurred with Israel and Gaza. Okay, now I'm going to bring this comparison up to you, and I want to get your viewpoint on this.
Okay.
We did not hear anything about that on the news, but now here something happens between Israel and Hamas or Palestinian, you know, such as this, that makes headlines. You know, why is that?
Yeah, last week you and I on Friday talked about the fact that when the Egyptian army removed Palestinians from their side of the Gaza border, nobody even basically knew about it, certainly not in the United States. And it was the same thing that Israel was condemned for in the summer. And now we hear again about this, and it's a worldwide headline. In other words, it's not the action that people really get upset about. It's who's doing the action that people get upset about. If Israel does it, oh my God, it's horrible. If Egypt does it, oh well, pass the butter.
You know, and that doesn't make any sense, because isn't what Egypt is doing by tearing down these buildings that are near their border? Isn't that the exact same thing that Israel did when they did it? I mean, you know, it's just it amazes me that we didn't hear anything about Egypt and Gaza, but you know, the second Israel breathes wrong, we hear about it.
Oh, I mean, I guarantee you that the news in the I hate to say it this way, but the pro-terrorist press worldwide will be that out of this morning's action, the news headlines will be that the horrid Israeli police killed 4 brave Palestinian youth.
You know, we've also heard that the reason, you know, they're trying to piece this together, and Hamas and the PLO, I'll get it right, the PLO are saying that this was in retaliation for a bus driver who, according to Israel, hung himself, while Palestine and Hamas are saying no, it was instigated by Israelis. You know, and this was a form of retaliation for that action. It seems that the second someone from the PLO or Hamas are killed, and it could be because of a riot situation, it could be because of a suicide, instantly, no matter what it is, no matter why, it becomes headline news to these terrorists. But yet when something from as big as Egypt coming in and say we're going to bulldoze this area, that's you know, you don't hear anything about it. But let it be, you know, let it be somebody from the PLO or Hamas being killed, this is immediately going to be headline news. I mean, I just, where is the true journalism here?
Yeah, the journalism, you know, be damned. I mean, the thing is, there is a double standard. Israelis have always known that there's this double standard. The Egyptian army can get away with precisely the kinds of things that the Israeli army couldn't get away with in a million years, in terms of the lack of condemnation that met the Egyptian army action. It's just extraordinary.
It is. Jonathan, our time is just about up, and I want to remind everybody, Jonathan will be back with me Friday He'll be right here at 7 o'clock. And with this news article that came out, I had to get Jonathan back today, and I got to thank him for taking the time out of his schedule to be part of the conversation. So join Jonathan and his show, Passionate Justice, right here on the Starcom Radio Network every Saturday, 2 p.m. Central, 3 p.m. Eastern. You can also catch his podcast. He posts it on his Facebook page. He also has a book out there. In the seconds remaining, Jonathan, tell people how they can go about getting your book.
Oh, Passionate Justice, a progressive memoir and essays. It's available real cheap. That makes a great stocking stuffer on Amazon. And Passionate Justice, a progressive memoir and essays. You guys will really like it.
All right, hang on the line a minute, Jonathan. Everybody else, guess what? You know what that means. Time for me to get out of here. Stay tuned, because coming up after NPR News at the bottom of the hour, Ed Till will be with you all the way till 4 p.m. So until tomorrow morning, 6 a.m., this is Bob Williams. Take care of yourselves.